This podcast, we want to get the word out. We want people to know we believe you. We want people to know that there's hope. And we want your support, meaning we want you to spread the word. We want you to share the message. We want, if you have somebody or you know somebody that's not believed, that's struggling, that can't get the right diagnosis or the right care or the right assessment of all the labs they've had run, the pages and pages and pages in all of the spaces of medicine, we want people to know that there's a way to kind of knit and pull it together. Hi, I want to welcome everybody to the podcast, Hope and Help for Fatigue and Chronic Illness. This is a topic that requires a lot of big brains and even bigger hearts. And today I am beyond thrilled to have Dr. Nancy Klimas. She is the director of the Institute for Neuro-Immune Medicine. She's going to be here with us today answering a bunch of questions, a bunch of your questions, and really giving us some color and a feel for why we do what we do here at the Institute of Neuro-Immune Medicine. I am Haylie Pomroy, your host. I'm the Assistant Director of the Integrative Medicine Program at the Institute. And I want to welcome you all and especially welcome you, Dr. Klimas. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, great. It's so much. I'm so grateful to you for putting this podcast series together. It's been an extraordinary, like a dream that we've had for a long time and getting it out to the world. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it is going to be wonderful. When I came in and I saw the magic that happened within the Institute, one of my very first personal goals was to make sure that as many people across the globe could have access to the brilliance that we are. So, Dr. Klimas, first, we're so fortunate, we're so blessed we get to spend so much time with you, but I want you to tell everybody a little bit about your background, how you came to be Dr. Nancy Klimas and how you came to create this incredible institute. So just share with us a little bit about what...
all the way back and credit my mom and dad.
We do. They get all the credit and all the blame, so it's okay.
That's great. No, really, seriously, I have a weird beginning to my story because I'm a clinical immunologist by training, and I was hit the ground at the very, very, very beginning of the AIDS epidemic.
Right.
Yeah. And I also got this amazing position at the VA hospital to help direct their HIV response, which was great. But I'm going to also say prior to that, I'm pretty significantly leaning heavy into the feminist side. And it was kind of weird for my whole career to pull in so intensely into taking care of, the beginning of the HIV epidemic was almost all guys.
Right.
So here I was with a clinical practice. It was almost all guys, and my huge feminist leanings. I'd see a woman go, "Oh yeah, get to take this." But on the flip side, I had one day a week at the university. I was at the University of Miami at the time, and I was doing the clinical immunology clinic. And there, I had a woman come in to see me with this weird constellation of symptoms that hadn't been able to be named by anyone yet. We're talking about 1986 or so. I mean, really a long time ago. And she just begged me to do an immune workup. She'd been to a cardiologist. She had been to literally 17 doctors, and they'd all told her it was all in her head, go away. But she was really ill, and you could tell she was suffering. And so I said, sure, I can do an immune workup. And we had a research laboratory as well as a clinical laboratory at the time. Dr. Marianne Futcher, my personal hero of the world, said to me, yeah, sure, I'll throw the book at this sample. And she did everything. So I came back to this patient a couple of weeks later, and I said, I'm sorry, I have to tell you that we found some really significant things going on in your immune system. And she burst into tears. And I thought, oh man, I just broke her heart. And I'd actually made her so happy that I had validated her illness. She was just crying and saying that you can't believe how important this was to me, and that we had, something we could work on that could really potentially help her. So
what kind of symptoms was she having?
She had profound fatigue. She'd wake up exhausted. She hurt all over. Her brain would wear out in about 10 minutes. She couldn't keep her focus. Pretty typical symptoms of what we now call ME/CFS, or chronic fatigue syndrome. At the time, of course, we had no name for this disease.
Right.
Just trying to put it together. But what was interesting about this woman, who was amazing, was that she had been sitting in doctor's offices talking to whoever else was waiting for the last 2 years trying to get this workup. And she knew another 6 or 7 people that needed an evaluation, and she sent them in. And then they all knew a couple of people they bumped into. And so I had it in about 6 months. I had a case series of about 30 people. So I published it. And the Journal of Clinical Microbiology, not exactly the journal that every primary care doctor reads, but I published it. And in the discussion, I said that it seemed to be an acquired, not something you were born with, but something you was acquired in your lifetime, a form of an immunodeficiency disorder that was acquired. Well, it got picked up by the AP wires as me saying these patients had AIDS, which of course I had
Oh my
not.
goodness.
But I was on the AP wires now, with the wrong phrase attached to my head. But anyone with the illness read it correctly and said, oh my gosh, there's somebody actually studying this. So internationally, it went out everywhere. So I had hate mail from the AIDS activists, which was breaking my heart since like the rest of my 80% of my life was spent taking care of AIDS patients. But it was.
Was it the immunodeficiency? Was it that term that was attached to
acquired immunodeficiency?
Oh.
Holidays. I didn't even use it all in the same sentence, but it was pulled out that way,
Right.
So people that would not be realizing that there's only 2 immunodeficiency types of ways to go. You're either born with it or you get that way. I said you got that way. So
wow, I did not know this. I didn't know that's this story at all. This is actually fascinating.
It's a good story. And then I just had a billion patients. All of a sudden, I was like the world's foremost authority of this illness that was in its early stages of being recognized. And then a couple other people like Tony Komaroff, a couple other people in the country were also bumping into these patients. And we got together and started comparing notes and sort of rolled from there. We got a case definition, we defined it. And the whole field was defined around those late 80s, early 90s findings from just a handful of people that had clusters of patients.
Were you at University of Miami at this point?
I was, yes. And I was brand new. I was like I joined the faculty in like 1984. I was
wow.
I had braces on my teeth.
and when gosh, there's a million questions I want to ask you. When there was able to have a diagnosis or a definition of this particular acquired, that's kind of a cool thing. Happens to you, it isn't you, or you weren't born with it. I know that created a kind of a flood of patients, but do you think it also created some relief, some I believe you, we believe you? There's a big shift.
Absolutely. I think these patients, and to this day, this still happens a lot. Unfortunately, you'd think after all these years of work, people would recognize that there's a real illness that is post-viral or post-toxic injury. I mean, we've done so much work in the field in the last, whatever it's been, 30 plus years.
Right.
And there's so much solid science. But still, it's awful hard when I often tell people the MS story. MS was exactly like this. Multiple sclerosis. People had this, weird illness that came and went. They were incredibly, profoundly weak. And it was thought to be psychosomatic. It was this unbelief of the medical community for decades, perhaps longer.
Yeah. I have a great aunt.
Yeah. Until the CAT scan came out and they looked and said, oh my God, there's lesions in the brain. This thing's real. So we were doing this kind of work. We have to first, help these patients and gather our knowledge. And we often met as groups and compared notes and tried to improve the kind of care we gave from other people's success stories or failure stories. But so we were doing this sort of group thing that helped a lot. And there to this day, that's much of what we've developed in this field has been from consensus, from experts who saw a lot, did a lot, learned a lot, and shared a lot. But trying to make that roll out to the entire medical community with decent evidence-based guidelines takes not just smart people trying to do the right thing, smart and compassionate people, but also money. It takes a lot of money to do the kind of work that evidence-based is, consensus.
Right.
You have to then the trials, and they're big and expensive trials. And that's where we are. We've done some of this work. We've gotten money. We're certainly doing trials. There's a lot of early trials, phase 1 and phase 2 trials in the literature. But there's great big definitive phase 3 trials. They're MIA.
Do you think that some of it, I'm just, this thought just came through my mind, is that it's not like high cholesterol where there's a one medication or potentially two that you could jump on and it could reduce, the numbers in a lab? Is it because it's so diverse within the patient? It's so biodynamic. The treatment is so dynamic. Do you think that is some of the?
Yeah, I think that what we've found as clinicians, if you break it apart, people got this way through different doors, and then they ended up with this great big common set of symptoms. Most patients are post-viral. So, and one of the things we're looking at on COVID, which has given us a tremendous opportunity to understand post-viral.
Can I punctuate that just a minute? Because those of us and a lot of our listeners, when we talk about post-viral, and then I want to get back to how we got to the Institute for sure, but this is fascinating to me. Post-viral means, in pencils and crayons, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they had a viral infection that didn't fully clear. Is that right? Or how would that be described?
So it's two different ways. So, and actually in long COVID, we're trying to explore both of these different triggers to kick off chronic illness, right? Either you had a hit and run, you had a virus that was there, you cleared it, but now you're left with a whole bunch of post-viral events where everything got knocked off kilter and your body now in multiple systems is not behaving the way it did before you were ill. So that's, we do a lot of work on that theory, the hit and run theory. But
so it didn't reset. It didn't reset to pre-infection homeostasis.
Right. It didn't have the normal balance of hormones and immune system and neurologic system things. And we can talk about that in great detail, but not right now.
We're going to.
But the other way is if you had an infection and you didn't clear it. And so this is certainly a theory. And we actually have a clinical trial coming up in long COVID that specifically focuses on trying to clear COVID in people who had the acute infection years ago. But now they're see if they still have any treatable aspect, very specifically treating COVID.
Got it.
Because
there can be other viruses too, right? Like
that's the thing. So in ME/CFS and also in long COVID, they align frequently during the acute phase of the illness and in the months that follow. They reactivate old viruses in this small, smoldering way, in particular your mononucleosis virus. But there's some cousin viruses to that. And then there's a virus called, an enterovirus called Coxsackie virus that is more in the gut and muscle. And that's also one that is
sometimes triggered
playing a role in both of these post-viral conditions. So the other thing that we do a lot of is post-toxic injury illness. So that's interesting because it's been well funded because this is military toxic injuries, and there's been a place to go to ask for money.
So like with burn pits or Gulf War?
Burn pits are part of it. We have spent a lot of time looking at Gulf War illness. Gulf War illness is had a extraordinary, almost perfect form of toxic exposures. There was burn pits. Yes, there were oil well fires because they set the oil fields. You couldn't even see the part of the country people were deployed in from a satellite. There was just on the planet from the satellite.
Right.
That's how much exposure they were getting to oil and fire on that. But the big exposure that seems to be the most important one is organophosphates.
So, Dr. Klimas, you just said organophosphates. Are those insecticides, pesticides, herbicides? What are those?
They are insecticides, okay? But they are also the key chemical in sarin gas, which is a weapon of war.
Yes.
So, and there's research now in the Gulf that people that had a gene that didn't allow them to detoxify down that pathway correctly, which, by the way, is also the same pathway for gasoline, oil,
right? Perfumes,
other things. Yeah.
yeah.
So these pathways, so this perfect storm of crunching down on this pathway, and these people that were slow metabolizers that couldn't detoxify quickly, they were the ones that remained ill. After 30 years later, we still have people with this chronic illness called Gulf War illness.
So there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of different doors for which individuals can walk through and to get this complex imbalance, disease diagnosis. But so the term that, and I get asked this a lot, the term neuroimmunology and our Institute for Neuro-Immune Medicine, is it because the immune system impacts the nervous system, or how is that knitted together? How is that nomenclature kind of encompass Gulf War injury, toxic injury, viral reactivation, COVID long hauler? I mean, all of this kind of seems to fall in our space, and that's because of the response in the body.
Yes. So we're not. The brain becomes the most important space to think about in these chronic illnesses, because the brain regulates your immune system, it regulates your autonomic nervous system, it regulates your hormone systems. And when there is neuroinflammation, then it's kind of a noisy brain environment where the signaling, the normal fine tuning that makes everything just perfect, goes out of whack. But the other thing that's playing a role in the brain is oxidative stress, which also causes neuroinflammation, and a very interactive bunch of things. So what we find in these post-viral illnesses and these toxic injuries, many years after their initial inciting event, is that their brain environment is unhealthy, that they have oxidative stress, that they have inflammation, and that these regulatory networks in the brain, like your hypothalamus and pituitary interaction, are subtly or not so subtly dysregulated.
So how did we come from University of Miami to the Institute? How did the Institute come to be?
Oh my goodness, that's such a funny story, but it's a good story. So I had been at the University of Miami, and it was a great home for me for a long time. And my VA base, I still have that Miami VA home base. I still have one foot there.
Nice.
A great place to have developed as far as we could. But at that point, which was 2011, it felt like we needed to do more. And we'd just gotten a rather large grant that empowered us to bring some more people onto the team and start developing this nidus of a true center of excellence. So I'd gone to the leadership at the university and said that we could do that there, and they expressed very little interest in doing that. And so I went shopping.
And you landed.
Yes, I did. And I landed at Nova Southeastern. I mean, I talked to all the large universities in my region. And in the end, Nova Southeastern University was so keen to be at the forefront of this important thing. And they got the vision, and they understood. One of my issues at a more traditional type of university was how siloed things were, that research was over here and clinical care was over there and education was here. And you were sort of put into a silo. And this is like the merging of all the silos in a very interactive way. And all those missions are incredibly important.
So in our...
that, that was our goal.
Yeah. So in our institute, we do have clinical care. We have research. We have a phenomenal lab. We have education. So that, again, that was what was, I guess, kind of shocking to me when I came from GW over. I was like so impressed that, I look at it from a holistic perspective, but that it was all under one institute, and how they work together in the synergy. Was that the plan all along, or has it evolved that way?
Absolutely. I mean, we dreamed it. We sat there with whiteboards and things and dreamed it, because one of the things that happens sometimes is just money. That I'm paid from an education track, I can only teach. I'm paid from research, I can only do research. So we went to Nova and said, we don't want to be structured in that way. We want the institute to provide everything that the university requires, but you've got to give us the flexibility, the autonomy to be able to to do this in a way that we think is most effective. And we got a tremendous buy-in, both from the university and from the college. And we're in the osteopathic college. And that's been also a great home base for us, because our clinical care model, our research model, and our education model is, this is all one big thing. You can't silo it either. It's not the heart. It's not the immune system. It is one big interactive system. And the very much osteopathic principles are talking about whole body medicine and not breaking it into its bitty pieces. So for every kind of way, I felt like we landed correctly in this college, which has tremendous leadership. I can't tell you how important it was that both the president of the university and the dean of the college were all in on this,
Yes.
Dr. Wallace and Dr. Hanbury.
Yes. So we've been able to do incredible things because of that. I want to talk a little bit about what we do as an institute. And what our goals are as an institute. Can we talk a little bit about, let's start with clinical, if that's okay. So we have a clinic. Our clinicians are extremely diverse. Do you want to just give a little bit of input on how you view our clinic? I have my perspective, which is it's amazing. And also why we're doing this podcast is so that we have people that fly in from all over, but we want to give people access to the knowledge that we have through this podcast experience that we've had to everybody. We don't want to keep it siloed behind our beautiful walls.
So Dr. Irma Ray and I were the first doctors that moved from our university. Both of us were at UM to Nova, first core, but we rapidly built the group of people we needed to do this. So coming from specialty clinic, clinical immunology, to a university where I was allowed to just do it. It was, we felt our way. We felt our way as we went. Between the two of us, we had, more than 60 years clinical experience in this area. And so now we were building on. And so over time, we gathered an amazing troop of people. We have, and this is so interesting. This shows you about lifelong learning. As we were developing people and bringing people in,
right,
the skill set that they brought to the table, without exception, every single person kept on learning and adding more knowledge in a more traditional way. So to give you an example, Dr. Ray, I just mentioned Irma, she became board certified in environmental medicine in addition to her credentials, and actually ultimately became president of the National Association of Environmental Medicine. So that was pretty impressive,
Yes.
That added that. Why? Because it was so helpful to our patients to understand toxic injury and what that meant and how to detoxify and how to get people out of toxic environments. And we have all that. It's incredibly important. We added some extraordinary nurse practitioners to our team, and Violetta Reneska and Irina Rosenfeld, as two examples, I think they've added 3 master's degrees and doctoral degree, both of them. And now they just got another master's degree. So I don't know. I think they've got the most initials of anybody in the whole program. But they also, every single one of those times when they went back to learn, they got boarded in integrative medicine and functional medicine and environmental medicine, and added, now they just got their MBAs.
It is amazing and impressive because this may be 30 years that I've been in the nutrition space, and I have had the fortune to interact with so many amazing physicians. I have never seen a more educated bunch when I walked in the door, and a group that's just committed to education. I do think it's because I think it's inspired by your patient base. I think that the cases are so right. They're so complex.
Like, what the hell is this? Oh God, now I need to learn another whole subject. That's exactly what it's been. When I was an undergrad, I thought if I have to look at the Krebs cycle one more time in my life, but I'll learn it this one time.
Oh no, yeah.
We have the Krebs cycle up on a friggin' board on the hallway. We stand next to it, staring at it and all of its interactions to try to figure out where in the energy cycle does this patient sit. So that brings us back to personalized medicine. And I do think to talk about that, because why did everyone have to get this smarter and learn all these extra skills? Because when you're doing a personalized medicine approach and you're gathering data, I mean, it's extraordinary what we can learn about a person, but you have to integrate it into the clinical care plan. So it's one thing to say, I'm going to order, the nutritional evaluation that's telling me every single oxidative stress molecule and antioxidant and all the other nutritional things that play into
the gut. Yeah. Or
and
look at your enzymes. Yeah.
500 or 600 new pieces of information on you. But now
Right.
how do I integrate that into a care plan? And the even more complicated, I don't know if I'll ever get this smart, but I'm trying, is that what we learn from genomic evaluations. I mean, you understand that when you do a whole gene analysis, you're getting not 10 or 20 new pieces of information, but a couple 100 million pieces.
Right.
And then somehow you have to pull out of that huge cloud of data things that are clinically relevant that you could act on. So you have to be really on your game to do this kind of work.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting to me is, so many times I see people get a ton of data, whether it's, looking at the gut or looking at the blood or looking at the immune system or looking at cardiovascular, but again, how to knit it together. And I think our clinic is really unique in that way. And in some of it, we talk about this a lot, is our Friday meetings. I mean, I zoomed in from Spain. I missed one. I try so hard not to miss it, even if I'm on vacation or whatnot, because it's so powerful. And will you speak just to a minute of why you insist that we do that?
Well, it actually speaks to team building, as we have a clinical or research vacancy in our space, or we're allowed to grow a little bit more, which is, always money, money, money. But anyway, we've been very lucky, because right now I think we have 17 faculty members. That's a very large institute. There's more than people that work within our institute right now. That's, at our university, that's the size of a college.
Right.
Some of the colleges are smaller than our research institute. So I'm going to say that you have to be thoughtful. So I give a great example. We brought Dr. Thea Herrerides into our team a couple of years ago. He's got a lifetime of experience in mast cell disorders, which and he brought that to the forefront.
Right.
He was one of the guys that said, hey, these people with all these weird presentations down this way, or these people with chronic neurologic or neuroinflammatory diseases often have these mast cell disorders, and this cell is important to try to understand and control. And he has developed therapies to get them under control. So he's done the whole thing in his lifetime. He's discovered a disease, understood the disease, developed the intervention,
researched, published,
foremost authority in mast cell disorders, and mast cell disorders play a big role in the illnesses that we treat. So he was willing to come first for a sabbatical to our group and then join our group. I was like, how are we going to tap into this? So we created it was with Harris came when we finally started doing these Friday meetings. They said every single one of us are seeing complicated patients, and some of the people on our team are newer to the field and could use all those years of backup that the people that have been doing it for decades could add. So it's been great. We have this Friday meeting. We bring all the clinicians. It's Dr. Thea Herrerides, so the mast cell perspective, Dr. Bested, who's got solid 30 plus years in ME/CFS research and is particularly amazing at teaching people how to pace and understand the energy in their bodies. She's really, really, really good at that. We have Violetta and Irina, the two nurse practitioners I mentioned, who have got every kind of degree and all kinds of experience and are ridiculously geniusy at doing all this work. They're amazing.
Incredible diagnosticians too.
Yeah, exactly. We brought a functional medicine person, Annette Fornos, and Denise, our other nurse practitioner, who's
she's functional medicine.
But she didn't come that way. She sat down in that seat, got stuck with all these patients that were like so complicated. She was like, oh my gosh. And what did she do? She jumped in and got herself another certification and just
amazing.
Developed her certification in functional medicine. So every single person, including myself, I might add, I added a certification in the last 10 years, which is a little bit much at my point. Environmental medicine. But so we all, every single one of us, without exception, have added certifications. Dr. Dr. Bested added the hyperbaric medicine certification, and she's working on a very active research program around hyperbarics. And
right. And so all of that knowledge and all of that base brings me to my next question, which is, why are we doing what we're doing? Right. We, some of our patients have the opportunity to sometimes go into some of our research. Some of our research is built around like you had talked about, those first kind of 6 group of patients at the very beginning. Some of our research is actually designed and built around what we're seeing in our patients, for sure. Sure. Yeah. And our outstanding and phenomenal lab, I was like, my version of going into, if somebody liked candy and walked into the world's biggest candy shop in Manhattan, when I first saw our lab, my eyes it was just completely blown away. In fact, anytime I get to do a tour,
I've always had a laboratory, but they're always in the dark, dingy parts of the building, and we got a laboratory with windows
and views and amazing
side of the building. It's a huge laboratory with all the bells and whistles. It's
whenever we have a visiting professor or somebody that's coming and we get to do a tour, and I know they're going to do the lab, I'm like, I'll do the tour just because I love to go back into the lab. I go there a lot. But so our patient base is at the heart or at the core of why we do the Institute. I want to talk a little bit about why we decided to do a podcast. And you're incredibly busy, incredibly in demand. Our clinicians are incredibly in demand. I have, been meeting people when and wherever we could to get this. I'll tell you, my inspiration was those Friday meetings. I was just, after this many years in clinical exposure, I was just in shock at the jewels and the gems and what would come out of people advocating. They're advocating for their patients and asking questions with zero ego. I mean, it's just zero ego, total humility, ginormous brain, and an even bigger heart. Like, that's what just blew me away. And so that was the concept for me with the podcast, is how we can have this kind of information and this kind of knowledge accessible to the masses. So, share a little bit about why the podcast is important to you and what we're hoping to do with it.
Yeah, just a little more in the Friday meeting, because I didn't mention that we bring in the top integrative medicine doctors in our region as well.
Yes.
So we're also
research.
And research. Yeah, the researchers are on the call too, and the laboratory, to try to say, hey, should we develop a new assay? Do you need something that we could do for you? Or if you don't do it for you. So that has been really pretty cool. When you think about that, these Friday meetings you'll start from a really complicated case, and then we'll just spend an entire hour talking about aspects of that case and pulling the knowledge from the room and getting excited and even designing clinical trials around what we might need to learn from that.
Right.
Pretty cool time. It always goes more than the hour. It usually goes an hour.
And we all talk fast. So in order to do what we do, you've mentioned we need financial resources. We have a lot of people that, like you said, that come in and help continue our education, that come in and inspire us and excite us just out of the goodness of their heart, just because, quite frankly, Dr. Klimas, they fully believe in your mission. And so, this podcast, we want to get the word out. We want people to know we believe you. We want people to know that there's hope. We did a big survey of our whole team, coming up with the title Hope and Help for this podcast. And we want your support, meaning we want you to spread the word. We want you to share the message. If you have somebody or somebody that's not believed, that's struggling, that can't get the right diagnosis or the right care or the right assessment of all the labs they've had run, the pages and pages and pages in the functional medicine space, in all of the spaces of medicine, we want people to know that there's a way to kind of knit and pull it together. So our goal here is to give you hope. We've seen it. We've seen people get better, correct? A lot of people get better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you asked me to talk about why we did the podcast. And this has been, over the years, I've had so many great ideas that I didn't actualize. But one of them was just, I wanted to do a book once, and I could have loved to do this. The people who got better, and have them tell their story, both, what was it that they thought got them better? Because every single story is a different story. You have patients who get tremendously better because you finally gave them restorative sleep and you dealt with some neuroinflammation, kind of the simpler things to do. To get other people who have gotten better because we just never give up. We say, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Let's go down this path. Okay, we need to do things in combinations to see them work, which actually inspired this whole computational modeling research team that we have that has told us without any question that pushing a single button in anybody with these illnesses is never going to get them better.
Right.
You have to actually think about it in terms of the different systems and be adjusting systems.
That's why our visits are hours long, not minutes long.
It takes a long time. So, the hope part of this, I thought this idea of writing a book and just telling people's recovery stories would be enough to perhaps prevent suicides, because suicide is a very risk in these chronic painful conditions that go on and on and on. And sadly, we've all seen them in our friends and in our advocates that I've cherished the advocates in our field, and to see them get this frustrated and sad to that point is just so frustrating. So trying to think of what is the helpful message that we can make sure we deliver, because we see it every day.
We do.
Some days where we say, some days are frustrating. Every single patient is, having a rough time, and, they had a flu or something and it knocked them off their feet, and you're just trying to patch them back up to get them back to where they were. And other times you have a day where everyone walks through the door and says, I'm just coming in to let you know how much better I'm doing.
Right.
And it's surprising sometimes what the final last little tickle is that you did that shoved them over their threshold to improvement. That you're just under that threshold of feeling better despite hitting as many layers of the onion as you can fix. And then you finally do this one more layer, whoosh, they flip over and there they are. So it's a very, for us, we see hope every day. We're lucky that we get to see people in terrible situations for decades that do improve eventually, not quickly. As I think people think you come in and there's a magic juice you're going to get, and this can make you all better. And you're like, come on, realistically, it took you 30 years to get this. So give us some time to help you. But that's part of it. But part of it is knowing absolutely, and this isn't news to anyone, that there's only a few places in the country where this level of expertise is available.
Right.
And there's 1 million plus patients, and now along with 2 or 3 million plus patients.
Right.
And they're just these patients with lots of experience and lots of strategies are just hard to. There's not enough for everybody. So a podcast like this is so important to give you some pearls to help you get along your own way. I know I threw out a little podcast at the beginning along COVID on how to help make it safe to take a vaccine. And I got all this response back that said, oh my God, we did that and my MECFS improved a lot.
Right.
And like, wow, that's something they can do, with over-the-counter approaches. And they were able to, at least that they hadn't heard anybody tell them the things that are widely available to everybody, and that you perhaps don't even need to, go fly across the country to get someone to tell you that.
And even with each individual practitioner or researcher's personal experience, because we collaborate so much, we suddenly, 10x all of our experience in a blink of an eye, right? Because we are able, I feel bad. I text everybody. We text each other all day long and ask questions, or I do, and you guys do. And and it's
a patient and text each other and say, hey, this, that. And also, with me, I will within our group refer within our group and say, I've done this much, but Dr. Ray could help you a little bit more if you worked on this.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So we want to take all of that, and we want to start to through each episode, give you guys pearls of wisdom, just experiences that we've witnessed the patients go through, what we've seen in research. And then we are going to do a lot of patient stories, because I do think we've got a couple that we've recorded already that I was just inspired to, double down on a few things in my own personal health, and passed the episode on to a really dear friend of mine that was really, really struggling. And I do think those kinds of reaching out are so important in this space. Dr. Klimas, I always cherish any moment that I get to spend with you. Your patients are so fortunate to have you as their physician. Our institute is beyond dedicated and excited to your vision and your direction. And like I said, the intelligence and the education and the knowledge is mind-blowing. And the fact that the heart is even bigger at the institute is, I think, what will lead us to more and more stories of hope. So thank you.
Thanks, Haylie. Thanks a lot. I so appreciate you. This podcast would be so important to so many people that otherwise would be, really hopeless. So thank you.
Yeah, we're coming for you guys. Hope is on the way. Help is on the way. And until next time, we will see you all soon. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you share these stories with your friends. We're here to help. We're here to spread the essence of hope. We've seen it, we feel it, and we know it's just around the corner for you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Klimas. We'll see you soon.